If you had to start a school today from scratch, what would it look like? What kind of school would it be? What would you offer? That's what we're going to talk about today with Sharif El-Mekki and Dr. Charles Cole. It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free. Welcome, friends and family. It is another Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after this hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. And we're going to be joined, not right away, but later, by Dr. Charles Cole to help us talk about today's topic, which is if you had to start a school from scratch today based upon everything that you know, everything that you have learned, and everything that your heart desires as a parent, what kind of school would it be? Where would you locate it? What would be the program? What would your school look like if you had to make an academy with your own name? If you put your own name on something, even though you might name it something like Sprouts or something else. But if people knew that it was yours, what kind of school experience would you have for the kids? And would they come out happy, healthy, educated at the other end? First, we're going to check in with Dr. Well, I was about to say doctor, but your master, Sharif El-Mekki. How you doing, sir?
Good, man. Good. I love this topic. Happy Friday. It's
Happy
almost
Friday,
November, man. Unbelievably so. I got to check on the bees, man. Get them ready for the winter.
Stop it.
So that's this weekend's thing. You got to take care of the apiary, man. You know what I mean? Make sure they're all set. They got enough storage for the winter.
This is a definition of black men doing too much. Bee harvesting and honey making.
Yeah, but good. Yeah, happy Friday.
Thank you, sir. Where have you been? Your travels, you are so busy in education world. You have taken on a piece of the puzzle, which is very big, creating the pipeline and hopefully a super highway of black male educators, black males who want to get into the education space. You have an upcoming gig that you run every year. It's a show that's going to be in, I shouldn't call it a show. It's more like a conference. We're going to be at the Lowe's Hotel in Philadelphia, Union Run Lowe's Hotel in Philadelphia with over 300, probably last year was maybe 500 black males, wasn't it? It was very high.
It was actually last year was about 900. Yeah. 878. Yeah.
Man, that's way bigger than I thought. People, if you're listening to this and,
we had the room, then we had the overflow sections. So we'll have that again this year. So yeah, the overflow sections.
Okay. Now funders and philanthropists and people, anybody who can get almost 1,000 black males together for a couple of days of conferencing around getting more of us involved in education, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. You should be supporting it. If you're not supporting it, shame on you. You should be, shame on you. You should be supporting this. Very few people are doing this. Well, listen, can I set up the story this week?
Man, I've been really excited about this topic all week. So yeah, let's.
All right. Well, let me just set it up this way to start first and basically say one of the reasons that I want to have this conversation is because of Dr. Howard Fuller. And many of you may know Dr. Fuller personally. Most of you should know him professionally and what he has done. He's been a lifelong advocate for education, specifically for the most marginalized, what he calls the disinherited, what Frantz Fanon called the wretched of the earth. For those of us who know in the United States, it's the young people left behind by a racially, economically unjust and uneven country. And he has for years been a leader in multiple capacities, right? So he led as a superintendent of a school district. He literally started a college, Malcolm X College. I believe it's a whole college. I know it was a program for a while. Going all the way back to the 60s and 70s, he has been advocating at different levels. He's been to Africa, he's been to, other countries. He was the superintendent in Milwaukee for a period of time. And then he was a lifelong advocate for choice, just for specifically for people who didn't have choice already, to have more options in the type of schools that they have. He's been a mentor and just like a beacon to me of what good looks like when it comes to Black education advocacy. He is it. He's the top of the he's my top of the chart when it comes to those things. And at some point a few years ago, he said to me, "Well, Chris, you know what? Listen, at this point in my life, I have fought every kind of battle in education, but at this point, it's a rescue mission. It's a mission like my life's work is going to be about building something permanent for young people that will carry on long after I'm gone. And I'm going to build something specific, something, solid." And that turned out to be a school. So Dr. Fuller Leadership Academy or Collegiate Academy is his school in Milwaukee. This is his testament to all of that activism. Many of us do kind of like commentary and activism in ways in which it's feels a little bit kind of like, it's in the sky, it's airy, it's not, there's no building for it. So he's the one who said that to me a few years ago. And I thought to myself, man, am I building anything that will last beyond me, right? I'll have my writings, I'll have my advocacy, I'll have speeches, I'll have shows and podcasts and all that. But am I leaving anything that advances us, advances education for our young people more than just policy and policy talk? So they got me thinking, what would it be if I were to start a school? So let me start at the beginning, because this is a show that hopefully you find some use in if you want to start a school. The first thing that I would say to you is maybe you don't have to start a school. Maybe you can just make your public school system better. And if that's the case, I would tell you to go to a website called whatschoolscouldbe.org. And whatschoolscouldbe.org has a lot of information and resources around if you want to mobilize your community to make your own schools that are deserving of the kids that we send to them. This is a site for you. So maybe you don't need to start a school. Maybe you just make your existing school better. If you are going to start something that's kind of a school, but still within the public system, you have programs like the I Promise schools, LeBron schools. Now, listen, I know a lot of people are, the moment that I say this, you're going to say, listen, there was just some stories that came out. These kids have all the all the supports in the world, but maybe the academics aren't there yet. But they're getting there. Super wraparound services. Every kid in this school gets access to support services that make them more secure, and their families get it too. Their families get support with housing and job searching and a lot of different things. I think this is kind of a good model if you want to stay within the school system. Travis Kelce, just so you know, also has something that I think is really interesting, that he, the other sports guy who's investing in education. He has something called the Ignition Lab. Maybe you don't want to start a full school, but this is like a WeWork co-working center where young people learn how to be makers. They make things, they build value in themselves, and they are the creators. And it's like a co-working space for 14 to 18-year-olds, I think it is. There are micro schools. An example of which is the Black Mothers Forum in Arizona. They run micro schools. They're basically family-based schools that start in a collaborative style. They have 4 pillars: education, health and wellness, civic engagement, and economic development. And if you are interested in that, I would say go to schoolchoiceweek.com. You will find this guide on how to start micro schooling and mix and match learning is what they call it. We're always coming up with these interesting titles. Just yesterday, I had a talk with a good friend, Matt Kramer, who runs Wildflower Schools. Wildflower Schools are a version of micro schools that you can start if you can find one Montessori teacher who's willing and able to work with you and partner with you to start a school. You can start a Montessori school. And if you go to wildflowerschools.org, you'll find all of their information about how they work, how you can set up a school. This is like loving, respectful environment that isn't just about the testing and the test scores, but they still get results for kids. So I would encourage you to check out this version of micro schooling. Anyways, that gets us to charter schools. In my state, Minnesota, there is a lot to do if I wanted to start a charter school. I'd have to apply to an authorizer. In Minnesota, I think we have 11 to 12 different entities that can authorize charter schools. Once they accept the charter, then they have to submit an affidavit to the State Department of Education on our behalf. I believe that's how it goes. And then you have lots of other stuff to do after that. You can apply for a federal charter grant. You have to prove that you're ready to open before you do. And then there's all these kind of steps you can do in terms of getting community support, engagement, all that type of stuff before you open. And then you're off to the races. I will say that a version of this to me that's really important that I saw years ago is there are a lot of
Mhm.
charter schools that look exactly like the traditional public schools in some ways. So you're getting a charter and you're just replicating what's in the system. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. High School for the Recording Arts is a school that I've known about for a lot of years. I've visited, I just want to say this to people. I have visited so many schools in the, last 10 to 15 years. I've visited a lot of schools. So I've seen a lot of things and I could just keep going on and on talking about it, but some stick out to me for very specific reasons. The High School for the Recording Arts was never about that kind of no excuses life model of charter schooling. High School for Recording Arts has always been about being an alternative school for young people who are a couple of years out of high school, meaning they have dropped out. And no one has come looking for them, and no one has found a way to get them back into the door. They have an older average age of their freshmen who come to their school because they're not a charter school that's looking to crank out college ready kids from some collegiate model. They are looking to provide a program that gets young people who have been detached from schooling back in. And part of it is they have these state of the art music production facilities. They have a compelling program. They have something for those young people that makes them want to come. Many of them want to learn about the music business. Many of them are deeply entwined in being consumers of the music. And this is a school that teaches them the business, how to produce, while they are also learning what they need to learn as students and become great students. So the last thing that I'll say about this, because the question today is, what of all of this would we do if we wanted to start a school? I don't know which of these versions of a school I would start. They each have like a compelling, attractive and compelling pitch to me. If you wanted to do a school program within the school district, if you wanted to do a micro school, an independent, I even talk about that, independent, private school, or a charter school. But one thing I will say, and then I'll shut up, Sharif, because I'm doing a long intro here just to get us set. um, I would think a lot about the building, and there's this company called Fielding International. I used to think they were called Fielding McNair. I had a friend that worked there years ago, and she just got me hooked on how much it takes to be deliberate about the space of schools, what it looks like. It changes the level of creativity of kids when you think about the spaces, the flow of the hallways, the flow of different kinds of subsections of the building for kids to do different kinds of work and thinking. Anyways, if you went to Fielding International's website, you'll find all these different things that they think about. They build beautiful schools. And no, before people get on me about how much it costs to do facilities and all of that, they also do low cost, just creative versions of schooling. But they think about like active hallways, agile lab space, agile spaces in general, an amphitheater, cave space, casual eating areas, calming retreat, butterfly gardens. Doesn't sound like amazing? Doesn't this sound like somewhere you want to leave your kid? I could keep going on and on, but they think about all kinds of use for space that creates more creative learning environments. It's not, it's science and architecture. It is not some fluffy kind of idea about just making schools look pretty. Anyways, I'll stop there. I didn't talk anything about what my principles would be or what my program would be, but these are some things that I would consider if I was going to start a school today from scratch. What do you think, Sharif?
Yeah, I mean, even just that last piece. I mean, I think the structure, the environment, the all of that is so important. Particularly you're talking about like a sense of belonging, not just from the adults, but from the space itself. When you talk about like environmental racism, and I put something in our chat, a piece I wrote a long time ago, where there were conversations that the schools in Philly that were built in the early 1900s, that contract went to architects who had previously only worked on institutions, asylums, mental asylums. So that's like what they used to. It was the same model, and so a
As
lot of
prisons?
schools in Philly, yeah, psychiatric
It was the
wards.
same model as prison? Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So a lot of the schools in Philly
Wow.
look the same inside and outside, kind of gothic, and and so folks were like, "Oh yeah, this was that architecture firm had previously had the contracts around the country to build, some pretty dim, dark spaces." And so I just look, when I first started teaching, we had windows where we had windows that were fogged over, so you couldn't actually see outside because I guess sunlight was distracting to someone. And
How
they
dumb is
figure
that?
like, you know what, these kids don't deserve sunlight. You know what I mean? That shouldn't be. So we're in a building all day, basically with only artificial light. For the most part, that's crazy. Um,
And we think that's okay. That's what's so crazy about all of it is we think
y-
that's okay.
yeah, because things like that, it's never one school, right? Like that's the design. They're like, oh yeah, frosted windows for
Yeah.
everybody. So everybody gets that, which is just pretty
You know,
crazy.
that raises an equity concern, and the reason why I would want to start a school from scratch is to create and concoct like um what is my kind of contribution to improving the environment of learning for young people.
Hmm.
And the advocacy and all that is not the same as building a space and having something look different. When I say I've visited a lot of schools, a lot of those schools are dingy. They're depressing. You walk into some
Dark,
of them,
dingy. Yeah.
dingy, old, broken down. They don't look like the real world. Know as a child that nobody cares about you when people put you in that building, they put you in that place. And then I go visit these other places. Well, first of all, let me just say this. I feel very privileged because I'm seeing it in action.
Mm,
My kids' high school
mm,
has very much a look to it, the way that the Fielding Group builds schools: big open areas, spaces, high ceilings, lots of windows, and mixed use spaces. It's a regular traditional public school, but it has all the things, right?
mhm,
Now you match that towards not far from us, maybe 2 miles or so from us, there's another high school that was built in the 70s, and it has very much that prison look to it, like few windows, dingy concrete brown on the outside. I don't know
mhm.
what they were building in the 70s.
It's that, and then plus the dinge that, you know what I mean? Like just the stains
Yeah.
that are like 50 years old that
Yes.
looks like it's part of the design, but then you realize that's grime. That's just poor
Yeah.
cleaning. You know what I mean? Like,
So I'm going to bring in somebody who can help us with this conversation. Who do you think that's going to be? Woo! It's
oh,
Dr.
Dr.
Charles
Cole.
Cole from
What's going on?
Chicago. From Chicago,
Who
on the
Yes.
went
set of
to
Prince's
what, like
video.
13 schools altogether? 11, like what, 11,
11
13?
elementaries, brother. 11
Just
elementary
11, just
schools.
elementary. So he's seen
Yeah.
the gamut, and I wonder how many of them were environmentally radically different
Oh,
out
no.
of
They
that.
were terrible.
Yeah,
It looked
you
like
know what I
that.
mean?
None were
I
good.
think about that sometimes. 11 elementary schools, and just what,
Damn.
like that makes my mind swirl, man.
I went to the same elementary school as Huey P. Newton, man.
Wow.
Yeah, and he vowed to never
You see what
send
he said
his kids
about
there.
it.
Yes, he started his book talking about it. But it's good to see you, brothers, man. Thank you for the invite and the call. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming on, man.
Look, you see him, Stuart. He think he got hang time now. Look at it. It's like a little bit like he think he got hang time. You know what I mean? Look at it.
Brother, I'm chilling. I'm just chilling doing me, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all are working me back into this talking space in the bigger group. I got my show, which is intentionally very small with like 6 people watching, but that y'all got me back on this
Yeah,
bigger
no, I'm talking
stage.
about your hair length. It's
Oh, I know what
it's
you're
like it's
talking about.
grown a little bit. It's
I know
grown
what
a
you're
little
talking
bit.
about, brother. That's called media training deflection, brother. That is
Yes.
called that is called
My training is to
control.
bring you back to the distraction. You know what I mean? The
There you
chaos.
go. It's long now, man. It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute.
Symmetrical and everything. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Ooh, look at the big words he's breaking out. Symmetrical. Anyways, so Charles, we teed it up to talk about if we had to start a school today, what would be the elements? What would it look like? What would the program be? What would be some of the non-negotiables that would go into it? Like LeBron started a school and his school, very specific thing. Travis Kelce has a program. Jalen Rose has a school. We have friends that have started schools. And I just wonder what if I had to put my name on a building like Dr. Fuller has done, and he has said, this is the testament to my work. This is like the pinnacle. I'm leaving something real for young people behind. What would the Dr. Charles Cole Academy for living in 3 states or whatever you would call it?
Well, you're about to get a confession and my thoughts. The confession is, I don't know if you all knew this. I actually was working behind the scenes on designing the school for a while. I actually just re-linked up with the person we were talking about, but we were building like a sports industrial school, meaning that a place where like athletes and all the athletes of that city could take different type of classes. So it wouldn't just be a place, just kind of jocked out, but it would also have things around the hundreds of other careers around that school. They would do, you still get your standard math and things, but like there might be something around like sports analysis. Like if you think about Moneyball and how they were using math and regression models to do that type of work, business negotiations, and then a kinesiology department where it's like, maybe you don't make it as the top running back, but the trainer for the Bucks makes a lot of money. The trainer for the Eagles makes a lot of money. So actually was spent like more than 2 years, and we just reconnected on that. So that's one, a fun fact. The other things though that I would say would be paramount that you probably couldn't see as much of, I think that there would be a updated version of home economics, like just to really help people be able to be on their own. Like I had an older home ec class in the last school that I went to, and it was a joke at first, man, but it was so many skills that came out of that. That was one of the places where at the time they don't do this anymore, but that's where I learned how to balance a checkbook or to sew a button or to build, it was just general things. And I know I needed that, especially when I bought this house and I couldn't stop a pipe from leaking. I think that that's paramount. The other thing would be like, there have to be in your curriculum for the major classes, like the classes that are like germane to life, like math, there would have to be a life application component to that curriculum. So it's like, how do we, you know what I'm saying? It's like, like not just teaching that geometry or that algebra, but like, here's how you can utilize this in your actual everyday life. Like that's the biggest thing that I heard from young people was they didn't learn how to make money. They didn't know how to apply these things in life. So I think there's some cosmetic things that I want to happen, but those things underneath would have to be paramount. And I think a stronger integration in community. I think Jeffrey Canada has been one of the best examples of it. But I think if you take a little bit of Canada, a little bit of what Du Bois talked about, and a little bit of Booker T. Washington, this is the Booker T. Washington effect, there would be an analysis for like, okay, for the next 10 years, like what are the industries coming to Philadelphia? What are the industries coming to Chicago? What are the industries coming to Oakland? And how, if there is a group of kids that maybe because a lot of people are not as in love with college as they used to be, but they know this is about to be the technology or the industry of this city's future, there should be a component there that is where you can graduate from high school and be able to go into a job that benefits your community, that's going to be able to take advantage of whatever industry that is, and you can like start a family and take care of yourself. I actually think if we did that, I think gentrification would look a lot different, to be quite honest. I wrote that piece a long time ago when all three of us were still writing and then doing the show. Like Oakland is preparing you to be a popper in your own city. And how do you break that? And I saw this when I went to visit Kentucky, Paducah, where I grew up. In the district, they don't have a charter traditional dynamic. They have a city schools and county schools dynamic. And the city school built a welding shop inside the district offices. And this welding shop became like one of the best welding training facilities in the state, where like kids are graduating and going into jobs, really good paying jobs for that area, to now it's open to county schools and it's open to people who might have records and things like that. And I think former students now run it. So those are just, that was a lot, but those are
that's
things that
beautiful. That's brilliant. What do you think about like finding a way for young people to make money while they're in school?
I did that actually. When I went to Stockton, my second high school, that's the high school I graduated from. I had a lot more credits because Emory had you taking 8 classes, and Stockton I only had to take 6. So I had all these extra credits. So my job on campus, I learned first grade Braille, and I was doing embossing in the blind center. For people that don't know, embossing is when you take text and things like that, and you translate it into Braille. That we have a machine for that. And I could read first grade Braille for a little bit. Ironically, I could read it by sight. I couldn't read it by touch.
That's very ironic. That's super ironic.
But I do think if people, when you look at budgets, and people don't really know how school budgets work and how much money is actually there tends to be a pot of money. I would take a slice of that pot of money, and I would have jobs on campus that grows kids, that kids have to apply skills to. They have to apply things that they learn in school, but it also has a fundamental like need there. I think part of the reason I've been such a good worker or business minded is because I actually had a job on campus and I had status because of that. And it kind of taught me entrepreneurship, and I was paid. I actually had like a salary. Like I was paid hourly. I would make like $200 some a week, doing that work. And at 17, and then the person that I worked with in the blind center was helping me understand how that worked and making sure I had that bank account and that I was putting things in there. So I think there's a lot. I think you turn anything into a learning experience. And so I'm a big firm believer that you pay young people for their time.
We're going to do Jesse Jackson type thing, learning experience and earning experience, right?
Hey.
You need an earning experience. You can't just learn, you need to earn. And listen, wouldn't it be more sticky if you came to school knowing that what you just said, like $200 a week is a lot. Like
it's a lot.
I'm like, man, that was more than my college work study money.
Right. Like the ability to make $200 a week. Man, think about if you made that a design constraint. It has to include making $200 a week per student. You would have to get very creative to make that happen. But boy, wouldn't that be amazing if it did happen?
I mean, or what if you had to maintain a certain GPA the same way you do in math, right? I mean, the same way you do it as an athlete, right? So I can't go play ball if I ain't got a 2.0. Well, you can't earn $200 a week if you ain't got a 280, 3.0 or something like that. Like I think, and I know they say that incentives don't work, but incentives worked like hell for me. Like they
work for everybody.
They truly worked for me. They so worked. And what I did was, I took that. My dad fronted me like I graduated 01. So this is when you could burn CDs, and we had got like a new like computer, and I learned that stuff. And my dad bought my first spindle. I paid him back, but now that I had this 200, I would buy these spindles and I would sell. I would burn a CD for you for $5, and because I was in Stockton and they liked Oakland, I would make you an Oakland mix for 10. So on top of the 200, I would reinvest about $50, and then I would make about $300 off of like people because they wanted like music and stuff, right? I think statute of limitations is up for copyright stuff, but
it's not bro. It's not. It's not. But, just so you know, people just got sued over Napster for $1 million. Individual users.
That's crazy. Well, I was only copying,
Sesame Street.
Absolutely, not Sesame Street. They got the biggest purse, bro. I don't want
true. Yeah.
I was copying me singing the songs that they liked. But the point, but that's what sparked. That's what started to feed into my entrepreneurial drive. Like I didn't know, like it wasn't really defined what it is that I wanted to do, but I knew I liked starting with something and being able to build something around it that I had to pay for and pay into, and then it yield more. Like that just fascinated me. And I think those entrepreneurial principles were being taught into me without a teacher, without somebody actually creating a curriculum. But when you create the opportunity, you talk about self-guided learning. That was the rawest form of self-guided learning, and here we are today. I mean, y'all work with me. Like I like that. I like being able to hustle, and I like being able to see that. And I think the last thing, bro, I would just say again, when kids say they want to do something and we ask them that, like we have to like say, great, I would love to support you in that. And here are these other like careers that are around it. Like again, I love basketball, but I stopped growing and I wasn't going to be burying everybody. But man, I really wanted to be a sports agent, but I didn't see people around it. Or there's people that get to just go to basketball games and throw the ball back to the there's so many. It's such a career. And I have a friend that played in the league who's now trying to become a general manager, and the skill set that's needed, it's like, damn, if you would have known this as a kid or somebody showed it to you, you'd be so far ahead, So
you have just described the Hustle Academy.
The
Hustle Academy, which I could have benefited from. You said so many things in it that I think are really important. Home ec, foundational skills, entrepreneurialism, business skills for life that you don't need to go get an MBA for. They're just some things you should be able to graduate school, whether you go to college or not, having the basic skills that basically kind of make you a hustler. Right, like what we call the gig economy, and what we call kind of like very few people are getting rich by working a 9 to 5. There are people that are becoming upper middle class, semi, affluent, but there's a lot to be had for the Nipseys of the world, right?
Yeah.
Who have a different pathway to making money. Anyways, so we got the Hustle Academy template there. Sharif, what would be your academic program?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the academics is I would want them to have not only just a real world, but also I would want as few doors closed as possible, right? But also things that are applicable. Where part of the goal would be to explain. Where a kid would like, what are we learning this for? Like all day, every day. I'd want our educators to have an answer for that, to be able to connect. This is why. This is how this connects. The other piece that I think is really powerful that Cole brought up was the community-based piece. Like I'd want it to be, like so grounded in the community's aspirations, but also not just like, hey, what do you want to do? Like actually sharing, like here are all the different like ways and options and things like that, and having that as part of the dialogue. I'd want them to be like literate out the wazoo, or like being able to analyze, be able to understand whether it's a political cartoon or other propaganda or just good literature, like be able to analyze and assess like what essentially like being highly effective communicators, reading, writing, speaking. Like for me, that would be a big part of like, how do I communicate in different languages? How do I communicate in math? How do I communicate in another language, spoken language? And how do I write effectively? And then, for me, like one of the things that, when I first got into education, that they were showing different models, they were saying like, if your school is supporting kids being highly effective writers and scientists, like if they have those two skills, everything else feeds off of that. Like if those are, and so I think that would be like my foundation, because writing, you have to have this level of analysis, because that pulls in the research. Most great writers are great readers, right? And but they're able to not only read a variety of things, but how do I synthesize this and make it digestible for others, understanding the different audiences, all those kind of things. But I think I would ground it in very, very deep writing skills, which ties into the analysis, and scientific skills, which also is the analysis. Like that's how I'd want them to, like, these, being able to analyze and assess situations, communications, how people are moving, how people are talking, and to think about like 80%, if I think I've already been hired in that. Like these jobs that exist won't exist. Like then we don't know everything that's coming, but we know that we're going to need problem solvers. We know we're going to need people that can research things. We know that we're going to need people that analyze and interpret and synthesize information and come up with solutions. They're going to need to collaborate. And so like, if I'm thinking about that, I'm more or less like, okay, what are the skills necessary in order to do that? And what's the type of environment and who are the type of people to help make that happen?
Yeah.
I think that is resonates with me for so many reasons. Let's just back up a little bit here. I definitely think that the focus on literacy and writing and communications will take you a long way, right? Like the ability to organize your thoughts. It has helped me in ways that nothing else did. Like most of my schooling did not work. I often joke that the class that I took that made the most money for me over my lifetime was typing. Right. Like, the fact that I could type when I left high school actually made me a lot of money in different capacities.
Right.
Typing for other people, data entry gigs that I did. It was just weird that one class turned into money. And then because I was doing this for other people, I started writing my own thoughts. I started, getting very involved with communication. So writing, communications, being able to be a great communicator, communicate your ideas. That's number one. And what you just said that I think resonates with me. Number two is your focus on science, right? Like we focus a lot on math and reading, as we should, because being literate and numerate is the foundation to all life. But science, there's a science beneath everything we're talking about. There is a methodology to life. And we have people in this society right now who believe really stupid things, who think really stupid things, and they don't get the science. There's a science to everything. There's a science to way, Charles, you and I have talked about this previously, like in hip hop. There's a science to what Nas does. There is a science to what Jay-Z does. But if you're a fan and a consumer, you're not seeing the science beneath what they're doing. They're not lucky
Rules
people.
the world, bro.
That's right. They're not lucky people. They have figured out systems and tested and failed. And, so science, I think, is a very important basis.
Yo, I had a question for you. Not a question. I had a comment before you had left this part around adding. I was watching, I don't know, man. I've been watching like these empires. We have been talking about empires. Fuller been talking about stuff. So I've just been studying some of these. So I've been studying the Roman Empire and Marcus Aurelius, his son. Yes,
really, bro. You've been studying.
I study that. I study Chinese.
Now who's Negropean? Now who's the Negropean of the show? It used to be me.
Here's the thing. I'm looking up more stuff for Shaka Zulu, but it just isn't enough. Like I've kind of ran through all the Shaka Zulu stuff. But the point was like Marcus Aurelius.
Make sure you check out Mali, Songhai.
Send it to me.
Kemet, all the
basically what I'm doing and I'm doing this thing on just a large study on just empires and at their fall. Like what was across the layers when they failed, because they all fall. And my hypothesis is you see the United States are doing a lot of things at the start of those falls, right? But Marcus Aurelius was teaching his son because they were a democracy in Rome. They didn't really do the hierarchy. They didn't do the kid. Your kid is the stuff, but he wanted to set his son up. But the education he put his kid through. The first, he said, you gotta be able to protect yourself and defend the empire. You gotta be able to feed yourself, and then you gotta be able to navigate politics and the mental traps of it. So he put his son with his best fighter. Actually, his name was Narcissus. That's where that term comes from. And he just beat his son's ass every day. Like it just was like you gonna learn how to fight on this battlefield. But then he put him in this mental rigor of like politics and theology and theory and like how to negotiate, how to like not be swayed, and also understand, because this is a time when your Senate would kill you. Not like your Senate don't like you no more. Like these cats will stab you. You know what I'm saying? So I think that there's a component, though. There's something to be said. I don't think we have to have something very, very direct to teach our people, Black people, kids that look like us, how to think critically and how to like be politically savvy and what that actually means. Not just a lesson, but like really putting them through certain things that help them like control their emotions. Like I know I've struggled with that. I think we all have struggled with that at times. I think that there would be a rotation in this school. There would be a self-defense, high like discipline section that you got to do. Then there would be like a food nutrition rotation where you got to learn what goes in your body, how to like look at dirt and how to like create, like how to like really feed yourself. I actually think, I mean, I know you can do this, Sharif, but like it's so many people that like, Miss Helen that lives next door to me, man, like she is planting stuff constantly. She does not trust just the supermarket by herself. And she 80 some years old and she looks great, right? Like, so I think there's something to be said about that. But I really think this mental health / politics component, and I would do it together. Because I think there's a lot of mental warfare that's happening to a lot of people right now. I mean, I just watched this thing where the New Yorker ran this article on Hassan Minaj, and like everybody like believed it because it's the New Yorker. And then he just came out yesterday with like the tape, what he said, how they sliced this stuff, like, and it's like, yo, like the media really controls things. So if he wasn't mentally strong, he would have just had a breakdown and not been able to handle it. I think we at a different time where we got to start talking about mental health, not in a cosmetic way, but like we're kind of putting you through some rigors to help make sure that you got that. That would be my rotation. Sorry for busting in with that.
No, this is very important because I mean, so and I'm stealing from y'all liberally, just so you know.
It's all good.
We're notating all of this because what I feel like this ends up being is a master school, right? This is so secretly. I'm just like crowdsourcing y'all for like what will become a very good school. But what you just said, Charles, I think what I'm about to say might seem like I'm missing the point of all the like profound stuff in there. But the one thing that you said in there is about how a father designed a program for his son.
Yes.
Right. So we have talked on this show before about home should be the first school.
Yes.
And if it is a school, what's your system? Right. I think as parents, a lot of times we're passive educators. Like we try to teach, but not really. Like we haven't thought it through the way that an educator would. Like assess what isn't going to be taught. I now know after many years of being a parent through many different types of many different grade levels, I'm pretty clear now on some of the stuff that's just not going to get taught.
Right.
I just really like pretty at this point now. I'm bitched enough grade by grade about what isn't being taught. If I were to call my kids down right now, if they're not home, actually they're at school. If I were to call them down right now and say to them, you know, what have you learned in history about, and start asking them very specific things, each till one will say the same thing. All we've studied is the state of Minnesota and wars. We've studied wars and we've studied the state of Minnesota. They laugh about it when I ask them, but did you study X or this or that or the other? No world history, no African history, no not very even facile versions of even the American history and all that stuff. They quick little facts and they move on to the next unit. Quick little facts, move on to the next unit. So it's all topsoil. You're not getting much. So, but I know this, but so what's my program? So I already have a school, the school of Citizen Stewart, and I have children in that school right now. My one strategy, if I have any strategy or plan, is my house is full of learning opportunities. We have books, we have maker spaces, we have I came home one day and all I had, you know, in one of our little side rooms here, there was like some chairs set up, a camera plugged into a MacBook, and 4 mics sitting there. And I'm like, you know, what the hell is going on here? Of course, they leave it all behind. My wife tells me, "Oh, your son started a podcast." Like, what?
Nice.
Now, this didn't take me teaching him how to do it. It just took the house having the things in the
environment,
house, the environment, and having.
But you taught him to have that kind of like, you know, like forward thinking, to like actually have, you know, because some are like stay in the box, don't touch nothing in their own home. Like I mean, I've visited friends, and it's like don't touch anything in their own homes. Right. So are they going to just go and like, oh, I want to create something. I want to think. I want to be innovative. Right. Like sometimes, you know, I firmly believe what you said, like home is our first school. Like innovative thinking can be stomped out right in home, you know, and it's not always about like what you have possession wise. It's like what you have mindset wise.
Covering on your sofas. How many of y'all had the plastic on the sofas?
Didn't have that at home, but had that at relatives.
My auntie's house and my granny's house, absolutely, and the runner down the hall. And if you got under the runner, like them little spikes that go in the carpet.
Oh yeah, that like sharp.
When it start to peel up, you were like, "Oh my god, he's going." Hey, don't run in my house.
Sharp jaws.
Don't run in my house.
Sharp.
I only mention this because, well, first of all, plastic was kind of, if you spilled Kool-Aid on the plastic, what happened? It should just roll right down onto the carpet. Yeah. It was kind of dumb.
So
but before
like
that, because of that reason,
in
my grandmother's house, the living room was for company. And so we just didn't go in there. That was a part of the house that almost felt like when we were in there, we were like, oh my God, what's this room? You know, because like insurance people would come and blah, blah, they sit in the living room. Everybody who came to the house that was not a family member sat in the living room, and that's how you knew they weren't real people. And that's how you knew to be on your best behavior. But I'm only mentioning this formal room. I'm only mentioning this silly analysis because one of my strategies in my house, there's no place where my kids can't go in the house. And there's books, there's tools, there are cameras, there are just things like it's like the whole house is like a library. So I might not have a specific sit down program in my house of this is what I'm going to teach you and how I'm going to teach you. But I do have a lot of learning opportunities. right? I have all the stuff in my house that as a kid, if I would have had it, especially being the creative person that I was, if I had full access to just go grab something off the shelf and had no kind of like, barriers to that, I would have been, I think, further along. My hustle would have been better, and I would have been more interested in learning some things. I didn't know some of the stuff I was interested in was called graphic design,
Mm.
right? How hard would it have been to put some things before me that would have helped me kind of like figure that out, right? Uh, Charles, you and I have talked about this. My high school son, a couple years ago, I got him a 3D printer in the house because I saw one at his school, and then I was like, these aren't super expensive. Like you go on Amazon and you look at them, you're like, damn, these are cheaper than I thought. But I didn't teach him how to use it because I'm lazy. And I don't want to, I'm not about that life. I'm not about that life. It's like, listen, if I bought it, that's enough, right? I bought it. And I got to teach you how to use it, figure it out. And you know what he figured out? He figured out that if you set up a student email, you can get a free copy of engineering software made for students that usually costs $5,000. And then with that, you can get access to a whole bunch of schematics of what you can build with your 3D printer. Now, to this day, I don't know how to use this printer. I don't know how to do anything. I'm not about that life. Matter of fact, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is all you. This is all you do. I bought it. Now you got to do the rest of it. This child figured it out. He figured it out. He built some things. He learned how to get schematics. He's the only thing I have to do is make sure he gets filament and he's all good. Imagine if that had been done for me, right? Like, how much further I would have been early in life, having figured some of these technical things out. And I think if it's not going to be in my home, our school should be doing more of it. Lucky for him, a lot of that stuff is happening in his school. They have they have a world-class shop class. If you want to build houses, build cars, whatever, cut any type of metal, they have a shop that could do it, right? Maker spaces, more maker spaces than just sitting down and dry and boring. So let me come back to both of you. Go, how do we make school less boring? Because the one thing that I know is even in the best of these schools, they're still boring. Some of these schools that I visit, I sit in there like, damn, get me out of here. Like it can still look good and everything and whatnot, but it's still boring. It's still boring as hell. Maybe I'm just like a bored person with school. Maybe it's just me, but how would y'all make your schools not so boring?
I got I'll go ahead, Doctor. Go ahead, Sharif.
Yeah, I think for me, it still goes back to like student choice and voice, and their like everyone talks about like, oh, real world, and then you get there and you don't see anything real world about it, right? Like to understand the real world, to me, that means what's the child's world? What are they interested in, right? Because most things, when you're talking about like just the basic of literacy, like you can't tell me that you can't use their world to help them with literacy. You can't use their world to teach them about math, the current events, and like how like Cole reference to this, like what's the thinking behind this? What's the patterns that's connected? What are they thinking about? What are the problems they want to solve? Either now or later. Like to me, those are things that like bring life. And then some of it is just joy. Like, you add an element of joy to it, it's going to be less boring. Right. And so if we're able to have like, how do you make not just the classroom and that individual teacher, how do you make the school a joyful space, a sense of belonging? To me, that increases just the engagement. And again, not a lot of times people think about student engagement. They think about one particular lesson or activity and are they engaged? When I think about engagement, I'm thinking about from the time they're walking to school until they leave. How is that and even beyond that, right? Because it's back to Cole's earlier statement. If it's community, that means you're always engaging in the learning, so to speak, right? And so for me, that's a big part where it's, there are too many people who are designing this kind of stuff. They're doing it from really far away from, from kids. I remember participating in a curriculum design, and I don't remember them referencing the people who were facilitating ever referencing students.
Wow.
It was all about like the content and this is what it and there was never conversation until, in the small groups we would bring it up. They just weren't oriented to thinking, how do we make this student-centered, student-friendly, student-led in the spaces that it can be. So
that's so crazy
to me, but that joy part, just like the excitement of being in school, is a thing.
It's not going to happen. But anyways, let me Charles, I want you to answer the same question and think about yourself as a student. Like, think about you, young Charles, but not young Charles back then, young Charles today, living and thinks school's boring. But I'm going to add a twist to this too. I'm going to add a realistic twist. All schools have to think about discipline and order and management, student management. How do you keep the environment managed and under control? You worked in Oakland, you worked at different capacities. You saw what schools can be and what they could not be. What would you do in the Dr. Cole Hustle Academy to make sure that things were orderly and that, discipline was being taken care of?
Control, orderly. Like you making my chest.
I got you. I think.
Wait a second. You want disorderly schools?
Is that a good?
I want community and cooperation and joy and belongingness. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
what if you have all that and someone's getting punched in the eye? I'm trying to get real about life here.
But that's what I'm saying. But like, there are situations like where you can create that where that's not happening.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I think because there's such a level of, despair, hopelessness in a lot of these schools, which begins with the adults, right? There's no reason for it just to be like this. And I'll tell you, like, I was in 2 turnaround schools, and the first one, like, I mean, they didn't have all the things that they were trying to control, and they were trying to do this. They didn't have trash cans because they're like, oh, the kids will set them on fire. Nothing was on the bulletin boards. Oh, the kids will set them on fire. There was no trash cans in the bathroom. Like, so it's like, it was just a bad. Why are there no trash cans?
They didn't have no chairs.
Y'all are New York City with just trash just on the streets. Just put it out there.
Yo, man, it was. I wish I would have had the foresight to film some of it, because it was just absolutely nuts, and it was able to be turned around. Like, you know what I mean? So, yes. But right. I think the orientation.
This is how I think about it, and I think you'll appreciate this, Sharif. I think, and instead of using those terms, let's use like.
And I believe in discipline, self-discipline, self-control will take you a long way.
I think self-discipline and self-determination go hand in hand, which is why there would be this analysis of where we are. But like a martial artist, like some of any type of practice, right? It could be the best boxer, it could be a martial arts, it could whatever. But somebody that's teaching you about discipline and preparation and these things early on, I know how to do it. We've all seen that brother on Twitter, right? The sensei dude that works with black boys and their fathers and stuff like that. I mean, something like that, where, because discipline and self-control, I mean, that's something that's really difficult to get. Like, I struggle with that now. Like, I think everybody struggles with that on some level. But what I would do to make it not be boring for Charles, for me, is I don't want to say gamify, but I think that's the best term so people can quickly get what I'm saying. I don't think 9th through 12th grade should have to be so linear. If for somebody like me, if I show mastery, not just proficiency, but if I can show mastery in this stuff, then I can move on to the next level, and I can do that. Based. And I can do that on my own time. Like, I can do that through the summer. I can be 15 years old and demonstrate. I demonstrated 9th grade math, 10th grade math and all that stuff. And I'm able to go at the pace that I need to. And maybe as I go on, it opens up new doors for me. Now, you making this be selfish about me, that would super motivate me. And not only is it that it ain't just like you about to have a bunch of 14-year-olds graduate from school super early, but once you've unlocked all those levels, now you probably get to, like, hey, now you get to work at that internship at that, with that sports agent, or now you get to work that in, you get to get your badge in this, or your passport stamped in this type of skill, right? Somewhat like like in the military. I know people don't like that, but my dad's a Marine, my brother's Army, my uncle's Marine. So, like, some of them cats got a lot of accommodations. Like, they snipers, they can do this, they can do that, but you have to be, you have to prove mastery in these places. Now, it ain't just about the school and its pace. Now it's about me and my family, and kind of like I kind of have some control over that. Now there's things I will put safeguards in place, fellas. Like, you know, you can't just be, you know, you're not just gonna be stagnant. There's a bare minimum that will still push you forward or push you to do these things. But I love earned privilege. Earned privileges always motivated me. So you telling me if I knock this out, I can stay out later? You telling me if I knock this out, I can get paid this? If I knock this out, I can go on this trip. Maybe if I master this stuff. And I also think that we should do more exchange programs, like cultural exchanges. So like if you knock that out, maybe you live in Minnesota, and if you knock this out, you can go study 6 weeks in California, or you can go study 6 weeks in Denver, or, you know, whatever. I really think, though, we got to take the lid off of it and stop thinking about it in such a narrow way. Like, education is a 360, like, full immersion, like, experience. And if we look at what Canada is doing, the lines, the barriers between school and community and this center and that and adulthood and all that is now there is a more of an economy of people, and that way you truly can be a lifelong learner. Like, I think it would actually be dope if you got a program so dope like in Kentucky where, hey man, I'm 50 and I had a rough go at it, but yo, a former student invited me to this welding class, and when I graduate from it, there's a $55,000-$60,000 job waiting. I'm talking about Kentucky, y'all. So, but
which is good money. Yeah,
that's great. That is great money for rural, rural Kentucky, right? And like, and my students are now teaching people in the community this stuff. I think that's just very different. That's a different way of looking at stuff. And schools should, if they're part of the community, how do they protect and build upon that community? I think this is the way these people are trying to protect their community.
I feel like you have just, well, first of all, I want to say for listeners, when you say Canada, you mean Jeffrey Canada, right?
Yes.
Who built like a community context for schooling, so people know that we're not talking about Trudeau.
Harlem Children's Zone.
Yeah, we're talking about Harlem Children's Zone. But you just gave so many gems in there. Like you both are like, first of all, you have just built my school today. But I feel like you have just complicated things. And I wonder what you think about this, Sharif. Part of what Charles was just saying, I think complicates the cohort age-based education system. Like if you're talking about having pathways for young people to move ahead if they want to, or to move back, or to hold back, or to do whatever based on their own pace, right? The first thing you have to do is get rid of age-based cohorting of young people. And when you do that, though, you don't want to break down the sense of school community, right? It can't be a free-for-all. So there needs to be something like, and this is going to be a misnomer of terms, or whatever you call it, a bad analogy, or a bad concept, but it needs to be like individual collectivism. That you need to still see yourself as part of the collective, but you need to be an individual. You can't be bound by what the group is doing. I don't know if y'all have ever worked on a group project where you were getting graded as a group, not as an individual.
Yes, damn it.
It pissed you off because you had 3 or 4 people.
I was the person doing the damn work. Yes.
Right. You end up doing all the work, and you know, and that doesn't make you happier about your group.
It doesn't make you smarter either.
Right. So I've seen this happen in one place, Summit Learning. I visited a high school in Seattle that had the Summit model, and it's a totally individual based, meaning the first student I met there showed me where she was in her program, all the way against her goals. They established the goals first, and then they reverse engineer to the individual. Each person has one of these, and it's shared by the platform, can be logged on by the student, the parent, and the teachers, which means nobody's in the dark about where you are in your, like, on any given day. I could ask you to pull it up and you can tell me where you are. No need to wait for testing. It's not dependent on your friend or your homie. It's like what you said before, Charles, like, you know, if we both running from a bear, and let's just say the bear is poverty. If we're both running from the bear, I don't have to outrun the bear.
Yes. The previous one was not a bad analogy. This one is terrible. It's just
it's not fair, but it's the reality of life, bro. If we both running from a hungry bear, I don't have to outrun the bear. I gotta outrun you.
But when he said the bear is poverty, it was like, yo, you just gotta be poor. Like, that was the terrible part, not the bear itself. Like, you know what I mean? Like that.
Have you seen the cartoon I made for that? I made a cartoon with that. It was a lifelong goal. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm very proud of that cartoon. Yeah,
I remember. I, you asked me like what I thought about that. I think that was my early experience in school. So, at Nathamasasa, you could be in Frelimo. It was more of a band, not necessarily first grade. And you're going to get this whether you're ahead, below, whatever. Like, this is what you're going to get. It was a band, right? And so, like, there was so much learning that happened peer to peer amongst, because you're with, first graders and second graders, maybe even third. I don't remember. But it wasn't necessarily even all day, right? It was something that was porous, because you may be there I remember my brother, Mikael, he would go to a couple grades higher for math. And I was a good math student. He was exceptional at math. So he would do math classes with other groups.
Wow.
Right. Literature, I maybe do with other groups. Right. And so that's how it was. And that's how it was with, our physical education class, which was martial arts. Sometimes we would actually go to somewhere else. So part of our physical education classes was actually at AFCOM in North Philly. You know what I mean? It was separate from like what we were doing as a collective. So the individual and collectivism piece, I think that was spot on. So let's let's delete the bear seed.
Yeah,
but let's keep that. let's keep the flexibility. But you got to have flexibility in thinking in order to design a flexible school.
That's right.
Right. And so I remember we had students, GlaxoSmithKline pharmaceutical company, they had internships. And they were offering in high school. You know how high school, every school gets out different times and this kind of thing. And I had staff who said, our kids can't go to that. It was a paid internship, mind you. It was a paid internship.
Paid by drug dealers.
Yeah, they were drug dealers, and kids, they were legal drug dealers.
The record, folks, Sharif approves drug dealer run programs.
We need less pharmaceutical, more health-based stuff, but that's a totally different topic. Listen, you got to have, sometimes I'm a cauldron of seething conflicts, as they call it. You know what I mean? A cauldron of seething conflicts. Yeah. So, but these were kids who were interested in those sciences. You know what I mean? One of them ended up, I think two out of the 4, 3 out of the 6 ended up being science majors, going like University of Sciences and things like that. So this was like part of like what they were interested in. Initially, we were getting staff pushing back like, that doesn't fit our design of our day. Like, you know what I mean? They'll get out of school earlier than what they're supposed to. Oh, what about this class? So like, can you provide this type of opportunity to them? Then if not, then we should be nimble in our thinking and figure out how do we reconfigure their roster, their schedule, so that they can participate. It's a paid apprenticeship for a career pathway that they're interested in. We don't offer it, but we're going to say, nope, can't do it. No, we can't do that. Like we hear no and what we can't do in school systems, in districts, in classrooms. And that's like one of the biggest, like my biggest pet peeve. Stop freaking telling me no, it can't be done. Tell me like what can be done and what's the cost of it, like time, schedule, resources. Stop telling me what can't be done. Because I can look at other schools and see that it is being done. It's just their thinking is different and what they think kids deserve. And if we open that up, let's go.
Taking the plastic off the couch for education, right? Like the limitless education.
Get rid of the spikes, get rid of the barriers, spiky runners,
and get rid of the bad metaphors like I'll run into bear, whatever. Listen, folks, as we wrap at the end of this, first of all, this has been, I think, one of my favorite discussions that we have had, because it's actually actionable. Like it could get us thinking about what school could be. And I
think it's in our visions, right? Like we've all in the past talked about starting a school. Like what would it mean? Like somebody asked me, would you ever be back in the school? I'm like, if I ever go back, I want to build it from ground up. I don't want to like try to reconfigure what's there. Like, no, I actually want to build something like with community. Like it just gets me so excited.
Well, let me end with the question for each of you. We have talked about this, what would go into a good school, but we started with there are different levels of entry that you could do this. You could just start a program within a school. That's a very good program. That's what, I Promise School is within the system. And I like that because it has scalability, meaning you're not starting from scratch. You're starting by using the system that has all these kind of structures and resources at your disposal. You're just reconfiguring it. You could also do something that's more after schoolish, like Travis Kelce has that ignition lab for young people. So drop in worker space for ages 14 to 18, and they can just drop in and make stuff. That's out of schooling. We talked about the Black Mothers Forum. They do micro schools. Those were Black moms coming together, creating micro schools for their kids where they get to control everything about the learning environment. Then you have micro schools, charter schools, and independent schools. Now, Hustle Academy, Sharif Academy of African Martial Arts, whatever it would be. What would you choose? Would you do a school program within an existing system, a micro school, and an independent school charter? What would you do to get your real vision of education out there?
I do a school booster. So I wrote about this in a report that I did on Cleveland. It might still be embargoed, but it might not be embargoed, but I'll share it with you too. But basically, it was for people that didn't want to deal with the politics and all that stuff of schools, but had it. But I would do a mix, bro. I would have of the Hustle Academy, there'd be a Hustle Academy lower and a Hustle Academy upper, but it wouldn't be what you think it was. I'll call it community hustle. Lower is K-12 ages, and upper is for the community at large, writ large. Because I think if you really, the idea of community school shouldn't just be relegated to kids. And I come from a place where second, third, fourth, and fifth chances are needed. I'm looking at things that I have to unlearn myself and that I'm learning now as an adult that I should have learned a long time ago. Like I did really good on some of the technical, like academic things like that, but like more so some of the mental things or just like knowledge of self stuff. Like if I knew where my family came from and what they did, again, Chris was there with me when I had this moment of learning about this dude in my family who was this historian about things that happened in my family. We looking at pictures from like the Civil War. We're looking at pictures of like a 17-year-old man, because he was a man dressed from the nines in a suit who had just came back from a war and was starting a family and knew how to build a house. So I think in the community school aspect, we have to take care of our kids, but there also has to be something that is also taking care of that larger community and especially our elders. There has to be a place that exalts the wisdom of elders, so that cycle can really be as rich as it needs to be. Because you got to take care of babies and you got to take care of elders. And if those two are taken care of, I think that things tend to work itself out in the middle. So I think there should be elder training. I think there should be a training, like a rites of passage. The same way you go from boy to man, girl to woman, there should be one from adult to elder. Because I don't think there's a manual for that either. And I think that's how you actually tap into a lot of those African principles that had us thriving, taking care of each other, feeding ourselves better, and things like that. It's hard to sell dope. It's hard to sell poison. It's hard to rob people. It's hard to hurt people when you see yourself as part of a larger plan. And I've never seen myself as part of a larger plan when I was a kid. So it made me very individualistic, made me very survival focused, which leads to you being very, narcissistic in the sense of like, I have to focus on my survival because I don't feel protected. And then Henri boys turn to Henri men. So like, there has to be something that actually helps you develop. Like Sharif has that in his religious practices, in his schools, in his reinforced community. And we were all jealous as hell of Sharif when we was in with him in Philly, because we're like, that's your OG. That's how your pops is talking. Like, I think it was a beautiful thing in that community with Sharif, though. If my dad don't have the language and his does, it doesn't matter because his dad is going to be my dad anyway. Like there's a communal value there. And I think that's the thing that's been most erased. And we've traded that to Google. And I don't think that that's going to help us in the long run.
I love it. That's amazing vision. Yeah, very rooted in history too, because the intergenerational learning part, I don't know how we ever let that go.
That's our strength.
I don't know why we turned ourselves over to a system that doesn't respect that at all. It was our strength. It was like, and then one last thing I'll say about your vision, because all of that just resonated with me. I'm gonna steal all of it, just so you know. Like just so you know, all of it is gonna become mine now. As you were talking, a pastor here locally in the Twin Cities, who says his name is Alfred Babington, Reverend Babington. He said for years that community is what happens when people feel like they belong together, when they know that they belong together. So he talked a lot about belonging and what makes people feel like they belong to each other. And this piece that you just added, this intergenerational piece, for me resonates because I feel like if you are a type of person who has gone through the school system and it didn't work out very well from you, there's this sense that you're done and that's your life. There's not a sense that learning and reconstituting yourself is possible constantly. So we talk about pedagogy. Sharif, I care about andragogy. And what are the systems of andragogy? Like, what are the systems of adult learning that we have in place? And the answer for that is we don't have great learning centers for retooling, reskilling, continuing your education, never stopping, not having it just be, oh, you graduated from high school, you're done, right? And if you didn't get what you needed in those 12 years, you're done. So, Charles talks a lot about the invisible institutions. And I think what are and Charles, you could say more about what you mean by the learning, the invisible institutions. But my question would be, what are those invisible institutions in our community and in our world that could have an education program that helps me as adults still become great, like continue to be on my pathway to becoming skilled and valuable to the world in some way, shape, or form, great with my family, great in my community, a builder, a maker. And if I didn't get it in 12 years, fine. That doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. This is so I might think about learning centers. I don't know if it's a school, but it could be like government funded and community funded learning centers that could help you with all of these things: entrepreneurial assistance, self remaking, self improvement, of creating value creators like in yourself. What do you want to learn? What do you want to become? Okay, that didn't work out for you. What's next? Like, what's your lifelong IEP, right? And for me, that would become selfishly of what I would have needed at some point. Selfishly, like, when I left school and I started working dead end jobs that were very depressing, and I'd come home on weekends and just want to spend the whole weekend not thinking about what I did for the whole week or whatever. That's not a life that I would have wanted carrying on, right? But there was no place I could go. We have like workforce centers and all that type of stuff. They're not very connected, and they're not doing a very good job of like helping people become relearners. You didn't learn it before. So anyways, that would be my vision. No, it would start with a program, I think, of sorts that would use existing infrastructure, schools, libraries, parks, park and rec programs, community colleges, workforce centers, and try and pull all those things into one somehow, like one way to navigate what you need out of all those different resource systems. Anyways, that would be my picture. Sharif, I'll end it with you. Unless real quickly, I know we got to run here, but Charles, if you want to say quickly, like what you mean about the invisible institutions that are at that disposal.
Briefly, I mean, before I think the term school has become somewhat repressive. Might be a strong word, but you get the gist of it. I think it limits thinking off top. It puts you in a frame of a box. Invisible institutions were things that come from our roots, especially during times of slavery, where folks weren't able to have actual schools, and it was their religious institutions. There were like codes and messages in those sermons because there was an overseer watching, but there was still this elaborate connection that was happening even under like the watchful eye of an overseer. I think that I think individuals are institutions amongst themselves. Like Miss Helen is an institution amongst herself. Like I'll just be doing stuff and she would just sit me down and just talk to me about the neighborhood that we live in and like what it was when her husband was alive and how they planted this stuff and how they did it and the politics of that place, right? Like, so when something comes up and she's like, that ain't new. They said that 35 years ago. This is what happened with that. I think so our people are institutions, and then the things that we value and it's our intergenerational relationships. It is our religious institutions that have always been a safe haven, neutral ground, even if you're not a religious person. And then I think it's also like the mentorship mentee like relationship. Like, I don't care if you're a Star Wars fan and there's the Jedi and the master, there's the Padawan and the master, or if you're a martial artist, or like, or you're David Beckham and his dad, or Michael Jackson and his dad. Like, there's an exchange that needs to happen, and there's an institution in there. And when we burn that down, it was easier for them to separate us in ways that we are now, where we're really divorced from greatness that we come from. So I knew about all the dope fiends and people that went to jail in my family long before I knew about people that settled this land, or that my grandmother was friends with, you know, Hampton's mom and all that. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's a disimbalance. And I think that if I known those things, if I had those institutions in place, I think I'd be so much further along. And we got to make sure that these kids who are getting their brains altered daily by social media gets reintroduced to an organic institution that looks like them and goes just beyond what proficiency is and is not.
Yeah. I mean, listen, y'all keep reiterating intergenerational, and I think that is absolutely critical, you know, and when we say intergenerational, like also like really pushing and challenging, like if I designed a school, where would it be when you're talking about like this ongoing learning? Like how many like elders may not be caught up as far as like how to use emerging technology, but there's teenagers who could actually lead a classroom and showing them how to do that. Right. And then you're talking about like reinvesting youth, you know what I mean? Like into the community, and then seeing like, oh, not only am I valued, but I add value to this community. Right. Like, and as Charles called, like what decreases, if I have taught this elder something, then I'm less likely to break in, you know, and respect them in some kind of way. Right. Because that is like, you know, again, back to unity. There's a common unity, sense of purpose that occurs, you know. And so I don't know, like ultimately what I would want to do. I think, you know, Baba Greg Carr is, you know, continues to play in my head where he said like, suppose freedom school, we were able to drop the freedom and this is just how school operated. You know, and suppose like that, because if it was designed in a way, whether it's the micro school or I would be concerned just that I'm at this point, like less and less patience for nonsense, you know, as far as like, you know, bureaucracy, bottlenecking, red tape for no reason that doesn't accelerate the work. I believe in systems, but I don't like bottlenecking nonsense, right? And so how do you do that? But I'm also far more sensitive than I was before as far as like sustainability and what does it mean? So if it's you know, someone offered the opportunity for me to open a private school, maybe this was before I left Shoemaker, to leave Shoemaker and work on a private school. And I didn't want to because I kept thinking about like, what about everybody? You know, what about the rest of the kids? You know, we have neighborhood schools now in Philly because we have like charters and magnets and private and archdiocese and all of these things. Then we have neighborhood schools, particularly in Black communities, Black and brown communities, where 60% of the students have IEPs. Now we know some of them shouldn't have IEPs, and the ones that should, we know they ain't getting the supports that they should, right? And so, but like 60% of the students have IEPs, or saying like they have that, which basically means that they're 3 grade levels or more below, however you want to measure that, not necessarily getting the resources, but they're also mostly boys. Right. And so then we're like, okay, so then I'm always like, you know, kind of futuristic, like, okay, what happens to them when they say like, all right, this isn't working for me and I leave, or someone hands them a piece of paper, say, hey, you've graduated, but no new doors have opened because of that. I'm like, so what happens to our city when 60% of them have, you know, not the skills, but have no hope and no sense of purpose. Right. Like not having a sense of purpose to me is way worse than not having skills, you know, because a sense of purpose, you can start acquiring skills if you have the support.
Y'all not having y'all dropping so many gems and you're opening up other conversations. We have to come back to this.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. But
because this last part that you just said, not having a sense of purpose is fatal for a community, like for people, individuals. When you have a man that has nothing to lose, like nothing left to lose,
the most dangerous thing.
That's the most dangerous thing in the world. And when you have many of them in one place who have all at the same time simultaneously decided that they have nothing to lose individually, when you have lost hope, when you have lost sight that you have a future to doing anything other than being enslaved by this world, man.
And that scares adults and educators. That's why so few places do turnaround schools. They're like, no, that is so full of hopelessness. Let's start a new school and we'll bring 20 and then we'll add 20 and then we'll do that in a super curated specific space. They're like walking into where there's like hopelessness and despair and lack of purpose and lack of community. That scares the you know, forget regular adults. The most polished educators are afraid to walk in that kind of space.
So as we end here, this is what I would say, kind of wrapping this all up. Number one, if you're listening to this and you want to connect with any of us, you can find us all in in the various socials, and we're willing to talk to anybody anywhere about improving education for our people and for
I
our
know my
young
school
folks.
is we're gonna have
So
banned phones. I know that part.
we are not
Don't
going to
bring
ban phones. See,
don't
I'm
bring
not
no
coming to your
phone
school. I
in
hate
this
your
in
school
my
already.
school. Don't
I'm
bring no
done.
phone. You know what I mean?
I'm
No
done.
social media, no TikTok, tickety talk,
Stop it.
none of that.
And like, this is the thing. We could do another show on dumb rules that schools have. This young person that got he's being sent to alternative schools. He wouldn't take
For
his
his
braids
hair.
out. Yeah, for his
Oh my
hair.
God, yo,
Right.
man, that
Right.
like,
Right.
oh my
So,
gosh, like,
so,
like
so this will be the next show,
that
people.
person, that
Dumb
school, they
rules
should
in
be in front
school.
of a judge. They should be in front of like a community judge. Like it's something like it should be some kind of massive response to the ridiculousness of the ability to do that. Like
This for me is the biggest challenge to the idea
oh
that
my gosh.
public schools have to take all comers, and every other kind of school pushes kids out and all that stuff. When you start talking about the type of schools that we care about, they're opponents to anything that's not in the system, and the way that they will oppose you is by saying, "Oh, your schools kick kids out, or cherry pick, or any of these type of schools." As if we haven't all been pushed out of regular public schools. Not all of us. I don't know what Sharif, you were in a different situation than some of us, but public schools have figured out a system for making sure they sort kids in the right way and get you in the. And one of them we're just talking about right now. Oh, your hairstyle's the wrong way. We're going to send you to alternative school, not because of your grade point average or your learning or any of that, not because of your needs, because you have braids.
Yeah,
stop it.
And
Stop
that's legal. Like that is insane.
It's part of the system. It's called systemic racism, which many people say doesn't exist. But anyways, as we wrap, this is what I'm going to say. We have a lot of conversations to keep having here. I'm going to go back through this tape, through this recording, and actually look for all the gems and pull them together, because I think there's a there. I do want to be very honest and serious and sincere about what I'm about to say, which is you are two of the dopest brothers that I have ever known. Right, like smartest and dopest. You are reliable. I can tap into you. You are always taking the call. If I have a intellectual problem that I'm trying to work through and work out, like this one today, what is the way forward? How can we just build our schools? How can we stop talking about it and start talking about what goes into those? And how can we have it be a community discussion? You are two of the dopest brothers I know. And definitely in education, you are amongst two of the dopest brothers that I know, because experience, your ability to pull together from your own life what are the learn, and then put them in a format that other people can benefit from. I think that's everything. Like if you can't teach it to someone else, or if you can't explain it or communicate it, what use is it? And you guys are making great use of your education and of your experience for real people. So I love this.
Feelings mutual, bro. Like absolutely.
I will say I don't have a answer for my original question today, because you both opened up like a million different pathways. It could just be a program that I would want to start. It could be a program within a district. It could be a micro school, a home learning collaborative, a Black parent or a multiracial parent learning collaborative. This is just my own thinking. Like I would be interested in all these different things. And at some point I might think, why do I have to pick one? Why couldn't I just have this continuum of, like, the lightest touch would be just make my own house a good learning school, my own house. And then my second thing might be, how do I hold my school district accountable for some of these innovative ideas that we talked about today? Why do kids all have to get up at the same time? Why do they all have to do the same thing like some just powerful questions for my own school district? Micro schooling, how can I find other parents that are in my same bag, and how can we share resources, right? How can I make sure that everybody get Dr. Cole's, agentic parent book? How can I just, how can we start building community around these ideas that we have? And then after that, we have friends and family that have already started schools. It's not like we would really be starting from scratch. We have people we can ask if we wanted to go further. If we wanted to start a micro school or a charter or an independent school, we have within our communities the ability to talk to someone who already has that. That's the richness. Yeah. So anyways, thank you, brothers, for all you do. Seriously and honestly, thank you for all you do. And to the people listening and watching, especially our folks in the comments, now Dr. Educator Barnes. Thank you very much.
Dr. Barnes.
Dr.
Okay.
Barnes. Let's just the newly minted doctor. Let's just talk about Dr. Barnes.
That's what's up.
And Philly is overrepresented. That must be your thing, Sharif. You got Maritza and others from Philly. Yes, Dr. Barnes, all up in the house. We love it when we see it. First of all, I don't want to just glow and gush, but I will say I've watched Dr. Barnes with admiration because number one, she's a librarian, and actually, y'all know my story. I learned everything I learned in libraries, not in schools. So librarians were better teachers to me than actual teachers were, just to be very honest with it. So I love me some librarians, but now she's Dr. Librarian. Yeah. So, anyways. Love y'all as always for participating, giving us your Friday mornings to talk with us. We will see you on the next episode of Freedom Friday. You are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this discussion about controlling our own education with Dr. Cole and with Sharif El-Mekki and with me. We'll see you next time. Appreciate you.